Okay. Well, dear colleagues, we now move to our item number 5 on our agenda, an important item in which Commissioner Magnus Brunner will present the proposed regulation on a common European system for returns, which was presented on the 11th of March by the Commission. As you know, this is a key piece to complement the Pact on Migration and Asylum adopted last year. This proposal for a new legal framework replaces the 2018 proposal for a recast of the 2008 Return Directive. I warmly welcome Commissioner for Internal Affairs and Migration, Mr. Magnus Brunner, who is joining us to present the Commission proposal. I will first give him the floor for his initial presentation, and before we move to the question and answers part. So, Commissioner Brunner, welcome again. You have the floor for around 15 minutes for your initial presentation. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, perfect.
Or is it too long?
It's perfect.
Okay.
Whatever you say, Chair. Thanks. Yeah, well, yes, almost always. Thank you very much. Thank you for having this discussion, of course, this afternoon, honourable members. As you said, Chair, we had this discussion, or started this discussion about a month ago in Strasbourg, where I had the opportunity to present this proposal on returns regulation, and we immediately had the chance to discuss it also in the plenary, to present it there and have the first debate actually there with you. So I think we got off to a very good start there. There seems to be, in my view at least, a large consensus, I would say, for the need to do this. Everyone recognizes that things are actually not working at present, and there's also a kind of energy around making progress on something that we have been stuck on before. This makes me feel quite optimistic, I would say, or perhaps, I hope it's not because of it's spring and the weather is good, but at least I'm at least optimistic. And I think that's a momentum we have, and this momentum is actually already translating into results as well. We have the latest European figures, the latest Eurostat figures. They just came out a couple of days ago, and we see that there have been 20,000 more returns in 2024 compared to the year before, compared to 2023. So the return rates are going up, but at only 25%. It is still, of course, far too low. And if anything, this only shows we need to build more, I would say, on the momentum to implement these reforms that are firm, yes, but they are, of course, have to be fair as well. And the reforms that complement and complete, I would say, the pact we already agreed on, that reinforces also the whole credibility on the system. And to kick off our discussion we have today, let me maybe briefly highlight the main features of this proposal. Again, as I said before, we had the chance to talk about it in Strasbourg already. First of all, and the first main part, the main highlight, I would say, is closing the loopholes. First of all, requiring the returnees to stay in the country at a specific location or within a designated area. That's the first part of closing the loopholes. The second part on that, if they are a flight risk, there will be a forced return, and there can also be a detention. And the third part of closing these loopholes, well, it's actually a priority, I would say. Not only do we need it for effective returns, we needed to also to preserve the whole Schengen area altogether. The second main part is mutual recognition. This is the idea of a truly, I would say, European Union system of returns, making it so that member states can easily enforce return orders issued from elsewhere in the European Union. We will also have a European return order to support this. Voluntary at first, of course, but becoming a feature of the system a year after the pact implementation in 2027. The third main point and the third highlight I would like to mention is security. This is a very important point, I would say. I just presented last week the Protect EU strategy, our internal security strategy. I think we need to get better at returning people that represent a risk to the security of our societies, and for this we should be able also to detain these people before they are returned to their country of origin, and to avoid causing harm at the end of the day. And also to, well, prohibit their re-entry in the European Union for longer periods than it was possible before. The fourth important point I want to mention is the return hubs. My starting point is that if this is to happen, we have to do it right, I would say, to also preempt future challenges on that topic. So I want to set clear ground rules, solid ground rules out in advance, and this will give more clarity, I think, and I think also more flexibility to member states. And that clarity also protect fundamental rights, notably by requiring the respect of human rights, of course, and also the principle of non-refoulement, by excluding minors, by excluding families with minors, and by mandating independent monitoring. We should, I think at least, not be afraid of this novelty. I invite all of you to have an open mind, I would say, and help find how this new solution can work actually in practice, in respect, of course, always of people's rights. And the fifth point I want to make is the one on readmission. We all know no return can happen without readmission, of course. And the idea is to link better these two ends and make the process as I would say, joined up as possible. A return decision must be followed up with a readmission request to the country of return. And then, of course, there is still a lot of work to do on improving readmission through negotiations with the third countries. Without the third countries, it, of course, won't be possible. You've just... I think you have before just had a discussion with Mr. Luchner as well. Mm-hmm. So you've just heard more about the state of play on readmission from Johannes Luchner just before, our Deputy Director General. And I think that's a very high priority, of course, we have to think about. And maybe to conclude one point, that's the point on fundamental rights. I want to, of course, reassure you that this is not just a talking point, I would say. Pragmatically speaking, if we don't take the rights aspect seriously, we will actually undermine our own agenda at the end of the day, and even more importantly, we would undermine our own values as a European Union that define actually who we are as Europeans. And I don't want to see the fundamental rights of irregular migrants weakened. Every migrant, even if they enter illegally, is of course a human being also with his own dignity or her own dignity. So I will stop here because I know the time is short, and it's better to discuss and to have your questions and an exchange of views. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you very much. And now then we open up the round for political groups. There will be a 2 minutes time for answers and 2 minute reply by our guest speaker. So we start with EPP, Mr. Lucas Mandel. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Commissioner, for your presence in our committee, as well as for the suggestion for the new return rules and also the good deliberation on it. The proposal by the European Commission on returns has been very well received by the public all over Europe. It's about time to act here, and the new European Commission is to be highly, highly praised, I would say, to focus on the right priorities now, including returns, including asylum and migration, and soon to come also integration, I would say, in our member states. Thanks also for your contribution today and the clear outline of the 5 priorities you have just mentioned. I have 2 questions on my mind where I would ask you to go in detail. The first is on the exchange of data between the member states of migrants, irregular migrants who do not have a right of asylum, in order to make sure that the return can happen immediately or as soon as possible without any application in a different member state. As I understand, it's part of the Returns Directive to also ensure this data exchange as soon as the directive will be in place. So technically and politically speaking, both of it, will it be possible technically to exchange the data properly 100%, and what time will it take to do it? And is there the political will in the member states to do so? What's your observation on that? And secondly, if I may, to what extent will the member states' governments make use of the future opportunities to cooperate with third countries? You have just outlined the option of return hubs for the future. You have asked us to remain with an open mind, and you have outlined the importance of human rights. I can only agree with all of this. So, to what extent do you think our member states' governments already maybe working on properly making use of these new opportunities? Thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Mandel. Commissioner Brunner.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Maybe starting with the first question, of course, on the data exchange. We do have a very, I would say, powerful system already, the Schengen information system. So yes, there is an exchange, of course, and we to exchange data. That is the SIS, as it's called, and we are doing a new proposal on that by the end of 2025. So we have to adapt it, of course, but it is a powerful system we have. On the return hub question, yeah, as you said, we are. I think we have to be open-minded and look into all different possibilities. We are creating actually the scope for member states to explore new solutions for returning people. Of course, returning people who have no right to stay in the European Union, and we are creating, I would say, the legal frame. We're not creating the content. Leave it open to the member states to decide, and to have these negotiations with third countries. And that's the last part of your question. Of course, it needs a third country, and it's up to the member states to negotiate it. They would have to send us the agreement or arrangement, of course, to look through it. Yeah, that I think is important. The return hubs, maybe to finish there, it would have to be limited, of course, to people with enforceable return decisions. That's one of the preconditions, meaning they've already gone through the whole process and exhausted all appeals and still found to have no legal right to remain within the European Union.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now for S&D, Madame Muriel-Laurent, the floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, for this presentation. I'm going to ask a couple of questions, but before I do that, I wanted to recall a few things with regard to what you've just said. I just wanted to recall that the most difficult situations, the most drastic controls and massive expulsions will never dissuade people who fear for their lives or people who are really in very difficult economic situations from trying to get to Europe, because Europe is full of hope, and that may well be the case for a returns policy which may well end up being inhumane, or at least seen that way. So we wanted to draw your attention to that. Now we need to really have rational arguments here, and the fact is that we're not flooded by migrants. There are no figures that show that, in spite of what the right and far right might say. We often hear that in the plenary chamber, for example. Now, for my group, this text is a poor response to real problems. I mean, it's clear that we have low return rates, and as you said, there are many factors that contribute to that, and so I think it's wrong to just focus on figures when it comes to returns. Because, and I was pleased to hear you say we're talking about human beings. Now, on my questions, firstly on the return hubs, you talked about a legal base. Could you tell us a little bit more about the way in which that's going to function? Because we've all seen that the Italian example hasn't been particularly successful, to say the least. And then you also raised the idea of holding discussions with third countries. We don't necessarily all have the same idea about which third countries we're talking about. So could you tell us which discussions you've started having and how we can envisage good cooperation with third countries? Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame Laurent. Commissioner Brunner.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, to start off with, yeah, as you mentioned correctly, it's always about human beings, of course. But the figures, you were talking about the figures, and the figures are also not very promising on the other hand, because only 1 out of 5 people who have no right to stay in the European Union is actually returned, and that's nobody understands that in the public, to be honest, and I don't understand it either. That's why we are presenting the return regulation, actually, because we want to be more effective, of course, on that. And more efficient also when it comes to the returns for the ones who have a negative decision already. That's what I wanted to start off with. Coming to the return hub and to the Italy-Albania protocol, well, as I said, the return hub possibility is actually something which we create for the member states, the possibility we create for the member states to look into it. It's a sort of creating a scope for the member states to explore this solution, this new solution for returning people. But of course, that can only happen also with third countries. And coming back to the third countries, it can only happen with third countries which respect the international human rights agenda. That's also a sort of safeguard we have in it, beside the safeguards I was mentioning before. For minors and families with minors and others, so that's quite clear. And the Italy-Albania protocol also, I understand. I mean, there are two different things. We're always talking about the Italy-Albania protocol, which has nothing to do with a return hub so far. A return hub is something different. A return hub is something for people who have a decision already, a return decision already. So I understand Italian national law will apply in the center of Albania, as it has been the case so far also on asylum. I think the center in Albania is a step in the procedure taking place before return to the country of origin. So I don't see any. It's something completely different. We shouldn't mix up the Albania-Italy protocol so far, or the Rwanda-UK, whatever, and the possibility for member states for return hubs. As I said, return hubs is only for people, or is meant to be only for for the ones who have a negative decision or return decision already.
Thank you. For PFE, Mrs. Ellers, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks again to Commissioner Brunner to discuss in more detail the proposal with us today. I've said before in plenary, and I'll repeat it here again, it's a step in the right direction, and I am cautiously optimistic about your regulation and the proposal from the Commission. And I agree with you that any return policy should be firm and fair. And then first of all, I would like to emphasize, as we've heard in plenary and again here today, that some are not as optimistic about the proposal, but they keep insinuating that this proposal is somehow an attack against people who are fleeing from war or violence. And it is not. Let us be clear. Return proposal deals with people who have no right to remain in the EU. They therefore have a rejected asylum application. They have no right to remain. If you are illegally present in a country, you should be returned to your country of origin. I don't see how there can be anything controversial about that statement. And although I think this proposal would improve the return rate of illegal migrants, we have to call a spade a spade. And the only way that this will really work is if we are not overly dependent on third countries for their cooperation. And so for me, a real lacuna in this proposal is the lack of mention of the external dimension of return. So we have a lot of bureaucratic processes within the EU that have caused problems. I have seen that you have addressed those through the increased possibilities for detention, cutting of red tape, etc., but really the external dimension is what concerns me. And so I am hoping that you can share some of your initial thoughts on what initiatives the Commission will take to improve cooperation by third countries, and I look forward to continuing this discussion with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Ellers. Commissioner Brunner, 2 minutes.
Well, yeah, as you said, the external dimension is, of course, incredibly important. What we did with the return regulation is, of course, only a first step in that, because we have to get our European house in order, first of all. And that's what we try to do with this regulation. And the second step then is the external dimension, of course. That is very important, and that's what we are going to start with from today on. We need third countries, of course, to find agreements, to find possibilities, solutions at the end of the day. So that is going to be the next step. But I think it's going to, as you mentioned, the detention possibility to also focus on people who pose a security threat to the European Union. I think to mention that and to put a focus on that, also the obligation for returnees to cooperate. I think that puts some, pressure also, of course. And has nothing to do with asylum seeking, as you mentioned, altogether. It's, of course, someone who has the right to stay and on international law and human rights. Of course, that's a different question. Here we have the negative decision already, the return decision already. And then it's of course, all about effectively returning at the end of the day. So, yes, the external dimension is the next step. That's not in the regulation per se, because it's our internal internal dimension. But now the external dimension is, of course, as important as the internal.
Thank you, Commissioner Brunner. Now the floor goes to ECR. Charlie Weimers. Mr. Weimers, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Brunner. The ECR Group has long called for practical and effective solutions to illegal migration. We therefore welcome the Commission's move toward our position. The return hubs are a step in the right direction. The inclusion of common sense measures, such as the obligation to cooperate and clear consequences for non-cooperation, which are vital to ensure return decisions are not just issued, but actually enforced. We urge the Commission to be more ambitious in its upcoming review of the safe third country concept and to strengthen its application in line with the joint letter from 15 member state ministers. After all, it cannot be that a country is excluded from the safe third country mechanism solely due to instability in one region, as a recent ECJ ruling implied. By that logic, should Sweden be deemed unsafe because its national police commissioner warned the country is facing, and I quote, a low-intensity civil war, end quote? Yet our greatest concern remains third country cooperation. Iceland recently called for the visa suspension mechanism to be triggered against Venezuela for abusing visa-free access. Over 98% of claims are rejected. They remain the third highest source of applicants, and their government refuses to cooperate on returns. The EU has mastered the art of offering carrots, but carrots without sticks is not diplomacy, it's wishful thinking. Commissioner Brunner, what concrete steps will the Commission take to operationalize aid, trade, and visa leverage as tools for return cooperation with third countries? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baimas. Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe starting with, because you mentioned it, the obligation to cooperate. I think that is very important beside the posing a security threat and the mutual recognition. I think these are the three main points in it. And this obligation for returnees to cooperate, I think, is really important. Just to mention a few topics on that, because that is, in my opinion, really important. The returnees have to provide information, accurate information, of course, and also documentation. They are not allowed, of course, not to destroy documents, or they have to remain in the country also. So there are some elements in there as well. When it comes to the safe third country, because you mentioned that, yeah, this safe third country concept is well, the review is going on, as you know. We are supposed to deliver that in June, which in my opinion is too late. We should be much quicker than that, and we're doing our best to be much earlier than June on that. I think that is important. And then what leverages have we got, and what possibilities do we have? And maybe I focus on the one I'm responsible for. That's because we need a comprehensive or holistic approach towards the third countries as well, to have agreements with them at the end of the day. And my point is the visa suspension mechanism. That is a very strong leverage I think we have. I think we need to make this much stronger. Also, we cannot accept abuses of visa, and that's why we are revising this mechanism, also the visa suspension mechanism, and that's the start of the. We have the start of the trilogues today on the visa suspension mechanism. So that is also, I think, a very strong tool to take.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now the floor goes to Madame Keller, Renew.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Commissaire.
Thank you very much, Chair. Commissioner, thank you for being with us again this afternoon to make progress on this subject of asylum and migration. This text is no doubt an addition to the asylum and migration package, as we have already said to each other. So thank you again for being here to work on this. 3 questions, no surprises here. The return hubs. You recalled here that these will be set up in third countries. So I should like to share with you concerns. There are many, but one in particular. How can we avoid instrumentalization? If we have migrants who have had a negative asylum decision or an inadmissible decision, I'm not fully sure how Europe can assume its responsibilities fully for these individuals if they are elsewhere outside of our legal scope. We could see how they could, we don't know exactly how they would be able to return to their country of origin from these hubs. It's a notion that I'm struggling to understand, with a real risk for instrumentalization by the countries that are hosting them. The second question. Now, you would like to have the safe third country concept, and I'm putting forth my interest. I was the rapporteur on the report that defined the concept of safe third country, and the Council at the last minute forced the revision within a year, or after a year, at the very end. And so we haven't even enforced a concept, and we're already revising it because it wasn't even applicable at the time of this change. So I'd like to understand better. I think it lacks respect, and it's also really there's some forcing, because with the Migrants bill we already had questions that were raised on this, and I'm really concerned about this way of ramming things through. Third question, because I can see that the chair is looking at me to hurry up. Now, could you be more specific on the respect for fundamental rights? How are you going to be able to monitor that? You did speak about that. I trust you, but what tangible mechanisms will you be using for this? I'm really worried about one thing, which is this notion of cooperation. The individual would be cooperating, that you are introducing that. How specifically will we be able to avoid an arbitrary application of this, considering the fact that we have individuals that will be subjected to a return?
Sorry. Yeah, thank you very much. Maybe I start with the legal scope you mentioned. The international agreement or arrangement that is, of course, necessary for such a return hub, that will define in precise terms what rules will apply, and these must, of course, be in line with international human rights standards and human rights principles. Otherwise, a return hub cannot be set up. That's pretty well, for me at least, obvious. So that's on the return hubs and on the legal scope. When it comes to the safe third countries, yeah, I mean, that's well, the pact is the basis, as you mentioned, and the pact, I think, has to be implemented, and these innovative solutions also, together with the pact implementation, I think is key. And one part of the pact is also that we have to revise the safe third country concept until June. That's why we're doing it. I just think it's going to be too late if we wait until June. What happened in the last mandate? I'm sorry, I wasn't a part of the commission at that time, but I do understand that. Well, I don't think it's disrespectful, as you mentioned it. I think I'm just here to work now on the concept and on the revision of the concept, and that's what we're doing, and we shouldn't wait until June, in my opinion. When it comes to fundamental rights, yeah, of course. I mean, fundamental rights are just non-negotiable, and as I mentioned before, with the return hubs as well, where we have these preconditions also for the agreements with third countries, it's just not to negotiate, and we have included quite a lot of I would say strong safeguards also to ensure the protection of fundamental rights of returnees, upholding our European Union values, of course. We align with the provisions of the pact, introducing, for instance, a new right to information and counseling for the returnees. That's one of the provisions. Also, free legal assistance, for instance, and also clear rules on remedies and also on suspension of returns. So I think there are a lot of safeguards concerning the fundamental rights in it, and yeah, that's why I always say fundamental rights are, of course, non-negotiable.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, the group of the Greens, Mr. Marquardt has the floor for 2 minutes.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Mr. Chair. I will speak in German, so dann geht's vielleicht schneller.
Perhaps it will be quicker if I speak in German. So thank you very much for being here. Following on from my French colleague's question, so we have the agreement with Italy that led to a lot of discussion about how you can deal with people in this way. And we have this Centre for people that have been refused asylum applications in Albania. Now, this seems very much to me like a return hub, but we don't quite have the legal framework for that, including the third country criteria. So we had a minister from Italy who said that this has been cleared with the Commission, that it is in conformity. So perhaps you could give us your impression as to whether this particular use has that legal conformity or not. And then secondly, I don't think this has been raised yet today. When it comes to legislation, it's useful to have an impact assessment to see where the problems are, where we can find the best solutions. Now, looking at the percentage of people to be returned, and so if you're only having a fifth, what's happening with the 4/5? How does that relate to the legislation? So that's useful to do an impact assessment. And then what do you think about the reform with the returns regulation? What would be the benefits? And then a final question with mutual recognition when it comes to returns. It would be good for this to be comparable. So we have Bulgaria, for example, and the Netherlands with 12% and 90%, so very different percentages between the two countries. So it would be interesting to see the different decisions, the different return decisions, and how that can be compared with fundamental rights. Thank you.
Marquardt, Commissioner.
Ja, vielen Dank. Vielleicht, weil Sie...
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. You mentioned the Italian Minister of the Interior. I mean, I think it's pretty standard for national authorities or politicians to ask questions of the Commission before they take measures, and that was the case here as well. And looking at the information that we have, this new initiative comes under national Italian law, which would be different from these return hubs. I mean, obviously, we don't have a legal base for return hubs yet, obviously. I mean, so return hubs are very different from this Italian-Albania protocol. Currently, the centres in Albania are part of a procedure that takes place prior to a return decision being made available. So that's what I'd say with regard to that. Now, on the impact assessment, I mean, actually, an awful lot of them have been carried out during recent years. There have been massive consultations that have been run. All stakeholders at all levels have been involved. I mean, everyone involved in Schengen. I mean, you know that better than I do. There have been studies, reports. We had reports from the European Migration Network, from civil society organisations. So there's been an awful lot done. There's also a study which is going to be completed as well. So anyway, an awful lot's been done in terms of impact assessments in inverted commas. Now, you also talked about mutual recognition and asked a question on that. I mean, there are different conditions in different member states, of course, but non-refoulement is always a condition. It's something that is constantly there as a basis. As long as there's recognition, then you can always not send them back if there are risks for the individual migrant. So there are good safeguards in place. But on the other hand, it's more efficient for the decision because the procedure doesn't have to start again. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now for the group of the left, Señora Galán. Señora Galán, the floor is yours. 2 minutes.
Muchas gracias, presidente. Gracias.
Very much, Chair. Thank you very much, Commissioner, for being here with us this afternoon and sharing with us this proposal. You, sir, opened the debate, putting forth a number of figures on the individuals that do not have the right to remain at this time in the European Union. I should like to underscore that those who come to the European Union irregularly, it's because there aren't legal, safe ways to do that, and they have no other choice. Therefore, people do not come here illegally or irregularly because they want to, but they have no alternative. It would also be worthwhile when we are discussing these types of measures to factor in that behind every story, behind every return, there are individuals, people. We're talking about tariffs, of course. We're not talking about that here. We're not talking about packages here. We're talking about people. And the majority of those people are suffering. With this proposal for a regulation, do you realize that we continue to criminalize migrants, feeding in the member states to when an individual has just lacked an administrative measure when they come to a country because they don't have any legal way of approaching it? Now, for decades, we have been working on the issue of immigration and with refugees, of course, as well. We know that these types of ideas and initiatives do not work. They are unfair. And the only thing that they do is just add insult to injury to vulnerable people. Opening return hubs or centers, you have called them hubs, but they are Guantanamo Bays, because they are not going to uphold the human rights of individuals. They are outside of the EU, where these territories do not meet the requirements of the European Union with their own citizens. So why would we believe that they would uphold the fundamental rights of those individuals, these migrants, these refugees that would be sent there? And we don't even know how long they will be there. It's undefined until the individual can be definitively deported. They're not going to be returned because a return is voluntary. So they will be deported to their country of origin, and we don't know how long they will be held in these Guantanamo Bay centers. Moreover, the cost is enormous. It's much better and much more profitable to regulate migration with those who are living with us and adding something positive. Chairman, I apologize. I'm coming to my question.
Pero sí, por favor.
Yes, please conclude your question, madam, says the chair. How will we be able to uphold human rights in these centers that run counter to the fundamental values of the European Union, and where the rights of the very citizens in these countries are not upheld? So how will we... It's a question, Chair. How can we make sure... How can we guarantee the human rights? When we know they're not being guaranteed for the citizens of the countries, how can we know that they will be for the migrants? Thank you.
Thank you very much. you mentioned different topics, of course, and different things. I would like to answer that. Of course, when it comes to legal migration, that's where we have to do our homework as well. We're talking about talent partnerships. We're talking about talent pool, the legal gateway offices, the skills gateway. So there are different things and different topics on that in that respect. You said we are criminalizing migration. No, we're not. We're really not. And it's not. I don't like the word Guantanamo in that respect, because that's something really completely different. And I come to that point because you were talking, of course, about the fundamental rights they have, and that is important. Yeah, you're right there. So I think it's not fair to put that into one sentence, Guantanamo and return hubs. It's something completely different because, and that's the answer to the second question when it comes to the fundamental rights. First of all, we can only work with countries where international human rights standards and principles, including non-refoulement, are respected. They are to be included also in an international agreement or arrangement. That's one point. And the second point on the fundamental rights, I would say, the agreement must explicitly define all the conditions for detention if this is needed in the hub. So there are a lot of safeguards in there that it's not to speak about a sort of Guantanamo because it's completely different. And another point which is important coming to the fundamental rights, national courts will always supervise the application of the international agreement also. These agreements have to be sent to the Commission, and also the courts, of course, look into it and always supervise the application of this agreement and also of the future regulations, of course, are coming up. So there are a lot of safeguards in there, and I don't think that's undermining any human rights, of course, and no international law, not at all.
Thank you, Commissioner Brunner. Mrs. Khan, ESN, floor is yours.
Ja, hallo Herr Brunner, danke, dass Sie heute hier sind. Es freut mich ja, dass Sie...
Thank you, Mr. Brunner, for being here today. I'm pleased to hear that you are optimistic, but I am less optimistic when you look at the political situation in Germany. 40% of Germans do not feel safe anymore, and you would find that hard to imagine 10 years ago. Now, I said this in the debate in Strasbourg already, that I think this report is not a real solution, just a reaction to the current political trend in Europe. We need to show citizens that we can really act here. So I think the area of sanctions is not clearly defined when it comes to third countries who will not take their illegal migrants back. So I don't know why this tool, which is quite a powerful one, isn't used more when these third countries of origin do not want to take people back. And we should be looking at development aid as well for these countries. And then these hubs outside of the EU. Last year, from the side of my group, we had a request to see if these hubs were possible outside of the EU. So I wonder why this is just an option in the report and not actually part of the key strategy. This area is related to so many other aspects. We all know we have the situation with the boats and the human smuggling, and it's something we really need to tackle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Khan. Commissioner Brunner.
Ja, wenn ich es jetzt richtig verstanden habe, geht es Ihnen auch wenn man konkret bei der Sache...
Well, if I've understood you correctly, this is about the visa suspension mechanism. I'll try and stick to the main subject. I mean, you were talking about the leverage possibilities that we have with third countries. But as I've said, there will be a report coming out later on this year, and there are going to be proposals as to how we can deal with third countries that aren't cooperative. I mean, obviously, if third countries are going to be non-cooperative, there have to be solutions, and we have to have ways of putting pressure on them. And we do have possibilities to put pressure on them. The visa suspension mechanism, for example, that Article 25A. But that's going to be looked at later on this year.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we can start our second round of speakers. Here on my list, we will start by Thomas Sikowski from EPP. And there will be 1 minute question, 1 minute answer. Please, Mr. Sikowski, floor is yours.
I see that I have it only 40 seconds, but I think my questions will be absolutely clear. I think that it's really necessary to continue with the pressure to illegal immigration, and I think that really what you presented here today, it's logical step what we have to do. And my question is, are you sure that third countries are prepared to negotiate it with us, and what will be our tool to press them, if it will be some economical interest or it will be some security cooperation, also with most problematic countries like Bangladesh, Pakistan, and some African countries. Do you have it? You can imagine any cooperation or any agreement, or who is helping you from the Commission? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sikowski. Commissioner Brunner.
Yeah, it's all about it's a sort of comprehensive approach we need to have towards these third countries, of course, and we need to look into all leverage possibilities we have as a European Union. As I mentioned before, there are some, like visa, for instance, like trade, like other things, and that's why we have to negotiate that on a comprehensive, with a comprehensive approach, I would say. That is important. I was mentioning the visa suspension mechanism. That is one part which we have to look into. Also trade, I was mentioning that as well. So there are different possibilities, and to have this comprehensive approach towards the third countries, I think is important, and that we have. But it's all about cooperation at the end of the day. We need them, yes, but we have some leverage possibilities, and we have to use them.
Thank you, Signor Zan. Floor is yours. 1 minute.
Speaking in Italian. Thank you. Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. Commissioner, I'm extremely worried because opening the road with this regulation with return heads is not a new initiative. It's very dangerous, it's very expensive, and it is a failure, much like the Italy-Albania example. The Meloni government, to move people as an ex-ante measure to Albania. Now, when it comes to the EU regulation, this violates the legislation in force that does not allow for extraterritorial transfers of people to third countries or as by way of transit. Or the example in Albania, how can we make sure that we respect the rights and the standards of the EU and uphold full protection of the migrants? The Meloni government is working outside of legality. These hubs cannot become free zones where the rights of individuals are compromised. Commissioner, moreover...
Okay.
More slowly, more slowly.
Okay, thank you. In tali centri si rischia di...
In these hubs, the rights to health care, these fundamental rights would be violated, rights that are enshrined in international law and in the EU. Thank you.
Commissioner Brunner.
Yep. Starting with the end, fundamental rights are, of course, important, and we, as I said before, we have these safeguards in it. I think they are very important. All the agreements with third countries would have to have these safeguards in it. And of course, fundamental rights, as I said before, are just non-negotiable. Coming to the Italy, Albania, we shouldn't mix it up. Italy, Albania protocol is not a return hub. It's, well, if it's under the law in future, whatever you decide and the co-legislators decide at the end of the day, I don't know. But now I think we always have to differentiate, because we sometimes deliberately or not mix it up, and which is wrong. We always have to distinguish the Italian approach from a return hub. That's for sure. The center in Albania is a step in the procedure taking place. I said that before a return to the country of origin, and with the return hub we're just creating a legal frame and also minimum of conditions for actual return to a third country.
Thank you. Monsieur Lezari, PFI, vous avez la parole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Commissioner Brunner. My question is on unaccompanied isolated minors. They already have more favourable treatment under the Asylum and Migration Pact, which unfortunately has already been adopted. As far as I understand, your draft returns regulation also sets out more flexible treatment for these minors. Could you specify how you would return these minors, bearing in mind that there are no real criteria for correctly evaluating age, and these so-called unaccompanied minors are actually not at all unaccompanied minors. This is a category where a lot of crimes committed by young people are committed by young people in these irregular situations, so-called unaccompanied minors. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Lezari. Commissioner Brunner.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think we need safeguards for minors and for families with minors. Member states, and that's in the regulation, member states must prioritize the best interests of the child, I think, when dealing with unaccompanied minors and families with children during the whole return procedure, I would say. That's why we think that unaccompanied minors and families with children will not be transferred into return hubs, just to give an example. But coming to your question, there are rules, because there might be cases where the age is not right, yes, and there are rules on the age assessment in the regulation as well. I think that is important. Medical assessments also, so that is part of the regulation, which we have to definitely consider. But as a whole and in general, I think minors and families with minors have to be treated differently, with all the problems we have with the age, but that's in the regulation.
Thank you. And now ECR, Mr. Basic.
Bardzo dziękuję, panie przewodniczący.
Thank you very much, Chair, Commissioner. I want to go in some more depth into the issue mentioned by Mr. Leggeri. I mean a different treatment of families with children by this directive. Of course, preventing illegal migration starts at the border. So at the border, we must be firm and try not to criminalize our personnel, border guards who work at the border. And I'm talking to the left now. We need to go away from the so-called criminalization of pushbacks. Pushbacks are a standard procedure when guarding a border. But Commissioner, are you not afraid that if you write in the regulation that families with children will not be sent back, will not be subject to readmission, in such a situation, whole families will try to get to the EU and whole families with children will die along the way? So will that not be problematic? People, smugglers, will know this and will instrumentalize such wording.
Commissioner Brunner.
Yeah, thank you. But just to make it clear, I didn't say they're not going to be returned. I said there are safeguards, and that there have to be safeguards, in my opinion, for minors and families with minors. I'm not saying they're not going to be returned, but there are safeguards to respect the fundamental rights, to respect all the rights of the children. That's what I said, and it's always I think to prioritize the best interest of the child. That's at least for me pretty sure. And when it comes to the border controls, to the outside borders, external borders, yes, of course, we have to do a good job there, and I think especially Frontex is doing a very good job there, supporting all the member states, protecting our European Union borders. Yes, of course, that is important. We can do better, of course, yeah, in everything. We're talking about the revision of Frontex mandate as well during the next months to come. So yes, there's a lot to do, but not mixing up, please, whether minors can be returned or whether there are safeguards for minors. That's, of course, a different story.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, second round for Madame Keller.
Oui,
1 minute this time. Floor is yours. Vous avez la parole, Madame Keller.
Merci beaucoup. Je m'excuse.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you for your answers, Commissioner, and also for your concern when it comes to protecting families and children. Now, I just wanted to be a bit more specific on a question I asked earlier. I mean, protecting human rights means that everyone in the same situation is treated in a fair manner. And in the text, there is this idea of cooperation, the non-destruction of documents, etc. So how are you going to prevent arbitrary decisions taking place? Because in cases of non-cooperation, there are more severe measures that are applied to migrants. And this is something that's not being assessed. So how are you going to ensure the fairness of procedures and respect for fundamental rights? Thank you.
Madam Keller, Commissioner.
Yeah, as I said before, we have the safeguards, but I think the obligation to cooperate is important, of course. I mean, that is new in the regulation, yes, but sorry, I didn't.
But what is the definition of cooperation?
Okay.
I mean, how do you check it? I mean, the same way it's in Europe.
Okay, now I understand. Sorry. It's always at the end of the day, it's an individual assessment, of course. Courts are looking into the cases. That's how we assess it. At the end of the day, it's always there are some obligations, of course, as I mentioned before, destroying documents, but also providing the accurate information. But at the end of the day, it's always a court which looks into it. So that's a sort of the safeguard of again.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now, our last speaker is Mrs. Melissa Camara from the Greens. Floor is yours.
Oui, je vais parler en français. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I'll be speaking French. And thank you, Commissioner, for talking to us about the values of the EU. I'd like to recall that human dignity is one of those values enshrined under Article 2 of the TEU. And I'm just surprised because for months now we're talking about innovative solutions as if it were a startup. You're talking about human lives here. And my colleague recalled this. No one leaves their country or their family for enjoyment. And what we want are legal and safe ways for those who are exiled. Today, what we have is a commission that is giving in to the sirens of the hard right, populism, and going right into the arms of that. Now, these hubs, I'm extremely worried. We have the FRA that has raised the alarm of the danger of these hubs, and I don't see, after all of your answers, how we can preserve, uphold the fundamental rights of individuals in these hubs. How are these hubs not going to become lawless areas? I haven't heard any reply to this because you haven't given us any answer on that, Mr. Commissioner.
I think I did give you answers, definitely, because we talked about the safeguards, and you just have to look into the regulation on how the safeguards work. Yes, we did, and that's what we are talking actually the whole afternoon, and talking about giving in to the right. It has nothing to do with right or left or whatever. I don't agree on that, not at all. I think this legislation has no political color. It's about the substance. It's not about a political color, to be honest. And the European Union has some of the highest asylum standards in the world, and this is okay, and this is rightly so, and this is who we are as Europeans. But it's not sustainable if people who don't have a right to stay, and it's always whether they have a right to stay. It's not about legal pathways. Of course, we need legal pathways, and we need legal migration as well. Of course, we do. And we need a right of asylum, and we need safeguards and we need to respect the fundamental rights. There's no doubt about that. But there are people here who haven't got a right after a court decision, after whatever, and that's what we have to look into, and return those people. As I said before, there's only 1 out of 5 people who have no right to stay, and it's always about having a right to stay in the European Union, not if they have a difficult situation in their home country. It has nothing to do with that. It's always about having the right to stay after a procedure, after a very intense procedure, and always with all the respect of fundamental rights. So that's not a question between left and right. It's not a political color question. It's about the substance.
Thank you, Commissioner. Then we conclude this item on our agenda, and we move to item number 6, which is about migration partnerships with Jordan and Morocco and the facility for refugees in Turkey. We have devoted almost this afternoon and evening to this matter. We continue now the discussion with Commissioner Brunner. We started with Mr. Johannes Lugner on readmission agreements and reporting on Article 25A of Visa Code.